The air in Manhattan's Upper West Side whispered secrets on that fateful October evening, its usual calm shattered by an unspeakable horror. The warm, golden light that typically bathed Riverside Park now seemed to dim, casting long, sinister shadows that twisted the tranquil facade into something unrecognizable. Inside one of the neighborhood's stately brick buildings, a chilling scream pierced the air, a raw, primal sound that ricocheted off the walls, pulling residents from their sanctuaries. Marina Krim, panic clawing at her chest, stood frozen in her apartment's doorway, her heart hammering as an eerie silence seeped into her bones, signaling a nightmare she couldn't yet comprehend. The hum of Manhattan enveloped the Upper West Side, an area known for its serene elegance and quiet dignity, with a gentle cadence that cradled its residents in a comforting embrace of familiarity. The neighborhood's historic brownstones and leafy streets rarely broke from their tranquil rhythms, and yet, on this particular October evening, something sinister lurked beneath the surface, waiting to shatter the illusion of peace. As the day waned, casting a warm glow over the Hudson River, the neighborhood's mosaic of lives unfolded in their predictable patterns. The air was tinged with the earthy aroma of roasted coffee from nearby cafes, mingling with the distant rustle of leaves. It was an evening like any other, where casual conversations danced on the breeze and laughter echoed softly from the playgrounds. In the heart of this picturesque setting stood a 10-story residential building on West 75th Street, a structure that had long been a cornerstone of the community. Its facade stood proudly against the softening skyline, the embodiment of a neighborhood steeped in nostalgia and trust. Inside, life moved with a comfortable predictability. Residents greeted one another with nods and smiles, their routines interwoven in the fabric of daily life. Charlotte, a neighbor, recalled that afternoon with stark clarity. Her encounter in the elevator with the young Krim children and their nanny, Yoseline Ortega, had seemed so ordinary. Lucia, the bright-eyed 6-year-old, had smiled with innocent joy at Charlotte's compliment, her laughter a melody of pure happiness. There was no shadow of foreboding, no hint of the horror that lay in wait. But just hours later, as dusk settled over the city, a sound shattered the evening calm, a scream, raw and primal. It ripped through the building's silence, cutting through the familiar tones of life and demanding attention. The shriek was a siren of terror, pulling Charlotte back into the elevator, heart pounding, ears straining against the sudden silence that followed. Meanwhile, Marina Krim was returning home with her youngest daughter, Nessie, from a day of routine activities. The absence of her other children, Lucia and 2-year-old Leo, was marked by an unsettling quiet that greeted her at the door. She had expected to find them with Yoseline, their trusted nanny. Instead, an oppressive silence enveloped the apartment, a silence that felt alive, throbbing with the weight of something unspeakable. Marina moved through her home with a growing sense of unease, every step echoing louder than the last. The customary sounds of her children, their laughter and chatter, were eerily absent. The sight of Lucia's backpack and Leo's stroller should have provided comfort, but instead, they heightened her sense of dread. As she approached the bathroom, a narrow band of light glowed beneath the door, a beacon that both beckoned and warned. Inside, the scene was devastating. Her children, her precious Lucia and Leo, lay lifeless, victims of a vicious act she could not fathom. The bathroom's stark white tiles were stained with horror, the walls witnesses to a nightmare that Marina's mind struggled to comprehend. Yoseline was there, too, her own anguish manifest in a desperate, self-inflicted violence. Her eyes met Marina's for a fleeting moment, a silent exchange devoid of answers, before she succumbed to her own turmoil. The cries that followed echoed through the building, drawing neighbors from their sanctuaries into a shared realm of disbelief and sorrow. They stood in the hallways, shadows painted by grief, trying to grasp the unthinkable truth unfolding before them. As the sirens wailed in the distance, their shrill urgency filled the void left by innocence lost. In the lobby, Marina clung to Nessie, her reality fragmented into shards of despair. Her cries were a haunting melody of a mother's heartbreak, a sound that resonated with an agony no words could convey. The world she knew was irrevocably altered, a cruel reminder of how quickly safety can slip through the fingers. The building, once a refuge of routine and security, now stood as a monument to tragedy, its walls absorbing the raw emotions of a community in shock. The facade had cracked, revealing the fragile nature of human trust and the darkness that can lie in wait behind familiar eyes. This was the Upper West Side, a place where trust had been implicit and danger unthinkable. But on this October evening, those assumptions shattered, leaving only echoes of the lives once lived in peace, now haunting the spaces they left behind. The autumnal chill crept through the streets, curling around the mourners who gathered silently outside the brownstone, a place transformed by tragedy overnight. The leaves, crisp and painted in fiery hues, crunched underfoot as pedestrians stopped momentarily, drawn by the solemn spectacle that now marked the building. The sidewalk had become an impromptu shrine, a silent testament to inexplicable loss, with candles flickering and flowers amassed, their scents mingling with the damp, cool air. Each petal and flame carried whispered prayers and unanswered questions, an attempt to impose order on the chaos that had swept through their community. The Upper West Side, usually bustling with the sounds of daily life, seemed to hold its breath in deference to the unspeakable events that had unfolded. There was a collective tension in the air, the kind that hangs heavily like an impending storm. People spoke in hushed tones, their words carried away by the gentle breeze that rustled the trees and scattered the fallen leaves across the pavement. The rhythmic sirens had long since faded, leaving behind a quiet that was both eerie and profound. Inside the hospital, Marina Krim lay on a stark white bed under the harsh fluorescent lights, her eyes wide but unseeing, fixated on a point somewhere beyond the sterile ceiling tiles. Her body was present, yet her spirit seemed distant, trapped in a perpetual loop of disbelief and desolation. The antiseptic smell of the hospital clung to her like a shroud, inescapable and cold. Nurses moved around her with practiced efficiency, their movements a blur of compassion and routine. Yet, nobody could reach the depths of her despair, nor could they undo the ache that had settled deep within her chest. The nursery rhyme tones of her children's laughter played on repeat in her mind, now haunting echoes of a past she longed to reclaim. Every moment spent with them, every soft giggle, every tight hug, was now a precious fragment she clung to desperately. But their absence was a chasm, an unfathomable void that no amount of memory could fill. Meanwhile, Yoseline Ortega lay restrained in another hospital room, her wrists bound to prevent any further harm. The stark white linens contrasted sharply with her pallid complexion, her eyes, once warm and familiar, now distant and clouded. She whispered silently to herself, her lips moving in a slow dance of soundless words, as if trying to negotiate with ghosts only she could see. The clinical smell of antiseptics and the beeping of machines were the only constants in her muted world. Her mind was a tumultuous sea of blurred images and emotions, a mix of guilt, anger, and incomprehensible sorrow. She was a ship adrift without anchor, lost in a storm of her own making, and now, like a tragic character in a play, awaited the curtain to rise on the next act of her life, a life irrevocably altered. In the corridors, detectives moved with purpose, their shoes squeaking slightly against the polished floors. They were piecing together the fragments of a shattered narrative, sifting through layers of history in search of truths hidden beneath the surface of normalcy. Each step they took was heavy with the weight of unanswered questions, their minds racing as they tried to decode the human heart's darkest recesses. The investigation unveiled a tapestry woven with threads of silent suffering and unnoticed desperation. Yoseline's life was dissected, each detail scrutinized under the harsh light of inquiry. Her struggles, her fears, the pressures that had mounted like a rising tide around her, all became focal points in an attempt to unravel the motivations behind her unthinkable act. As the city continued to grapple with the aftermath, the question lingered in the air like smoke. Why? Why had a trusted caretaker become the harbinger of such devastation? The answers were elusive, hiding in the shadows cast by human complexity. In the quiet of the hospital and the muted despair of the streets, one truth remained. A family's reality had been shattered, and the echoes of that night would haunt the Upper West Side for years to come. The blade sliced through innocence and trust, leaving nothing but raw, aching devastation in its wake. The courtroom was a symphony of tension, each word from the prosecutor adding to the mounting crescendo of horror that enveloped the air. Eyes flickered toward Yoseline Ortega, searching for a hint of remorse or madness in her vacant stare. But her face was a mask, an impenetrable façade that revealed nothing. Her hands lay limply in her lap, as though disconnected from any culpability, yet the blood of her crime was forever etched into the lines of her fingers. Outside the courthouse, the city pulsed with its usual chaotic rhythm. But here, time seemed to stand still. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and polished leather, a testament to the weight of justice that hung heavily over the proceedings. The walls, adorned with portraits of stern-faced judges from eras past, bore silent witness to the unfolding drama, their eyes forever locked in judgment from the confines of their canvas prisons. In the gallery, the Crims sat, their presence a steady reminder of the life that once was. Marina's fingers intertwined with Kevin's, their hands a lifeline in a sea of grief. Her eyes, though hollowed by loss, burned with a fierce determination to see justice done. Every heartbeat seemed to echo with the names of her lost children, Lulu and Leo, a cadence of sorrow that underpinned her every breath. The defense took the floor, weaving their narrative of a fractured mind, a soul lost to the abyss of mental illness. They painted a picture of desperation, of a woman trapped in a relentless storm of fear and paranoia. Their words were laced with the scent of hospital corridors and the sterile tang of antiseptic, evoking the cold sterility of the psychiatric evaluations that had deemed her competent. But the prosecution struck back with a force that was almost palpable. They conjured the image of Ortega in the moments before the crime, her actions methodical, the decision deliberate. The courtroom was saturated with the metallic taste of tension, as if the very air held its breath, waiting for the truth to be laid bare. Each witness brought forth a new layer of the tragedy. Their testimonies were like shards of glass, each reflecting a different facet of the nightmare. The doorman who had seen Yoseline on the morning of the murders, her demeanor calm, her smile unchanged. The neighbor who had heard nothing but the ordinary sounds of a family's day, only to be shattered by sirens echoing through the hallways. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll was evident on the faces of those who bore witness. Silent tears traced paths down drawn cheeks, while others sat rigid, their hands clenching and unclenching in restless anguish. The weight of what had happened pressed down on them all, a shared burden that bound them together even as it tore them apart. When the court adjourned for the day, the Crims emerged into the fading light of early evening. The city, indifferent to their grief, continued to buzz around them. But for Kevin and Marina, the world had irrevocably changed. Each step away from the courthouse was a step further from the life they had once known, a life where Lulu and Leo's laughter still echoed in their ears. As the doors to the courtroom closed behind them, the echoes of the trial lingered like a haunting refrain, a relentless reminder of innocence lost and the unyielding pursuit of justice. The battle lines were drawn, and the trial of Yoseline Ortega was far from over. The truth awaited its revelation, hidden within the intricacies of human nature and the unfathomable depths of despair. And beneath it all, the city held its breath, waiting for the verdict that would either affirm or shatter the fragile semblance of understanding. The courtroom was a theater of emotions, a crucible where anguish met analytical inquiry, a place where the air itself seemed to weigh heavily on the shoulders of all present. The legal representatives, clad in their formal attire, exchanged arguments with the precision of chess players, each word a calculated step designed to sway, convince, or sow doubt. But beyond the legal jargon and strategic maneuvering lay the raw, unfiltered humanity of the case, the loss, the horror, and the incomprehensible nature of the crime itself. Marina Krim, a mother gutted by grief, bore witness to the unimaginable. Her testimony was not the sterile recitation of facts. It was a soul laid bare. The courtroom transformed into a visceral landscape as she described the scene she had stumbled upon. The bathroom, once a mundane space, now a macabre tableau. The smell of copper, thick in the air, mingled with the sterile scent of cleaning agents that could never erase the stains of violence that had occurred. Her voice, though shaken, cut through the silence like a shard of glass, each word laden with the weight of profound loss. As Marina spoke, her eyes locked onto Yoseline Ortega, the accused. The silence between them was palpable, a chasm filled with unspoken accusations and the echo of laughter that would never again fill her home. Marina's description of the children, Lulu's eyes, frozen in time, Leo's small, lifeless form, painted a picture that was both vivid and haunting. It was a reality no parent should ever have to face, and her words hung in the air long after they were spoken, leaving an indelible mark on all who heard them. The jury, tasked with the unbearable burden of impartiality, struggled visibly with the harrowing details. Faces etched with discomfort and hands that trembled slightly as they took notes. They were the silent observers of a tragedy that defied understanding. One juror, unable to bear the weight any longer, requested to be excused, his resolve crumbling under the emotional strain. Yoseline Ortega, seated at the defendant's table, was a study in contrasts. Her demeanor, described by some as detached, seemed at odds with the gravity of her situation. At times, her lack of visible emotion felt like a provocation, a silent defiance that dared the courtroom to question her humanity. Yet beneath her stoic exterior lay the unresolved enigma of her mind, a labyrinth of mental illness and potential psychosis that the defense sought desperately to prove. The defense's narrative of a woman tormented by voices and visions since adolescence was a story of missed opportunities and untreated afflictions. Yoseline's mental state was painted as a tapestry woven with threads of desperation, faith, and fear. Yet, the prosecution countered with stark assertiveness, detailing a sequence of actions that suggested premeditation rather than madness. The knives, taken from the kitchen, were not the tools of a mind in chaos, but rather instruments in a deliberate, chilling act. The visual evidence, graphic and unyielding, cast a long shadow over the proceedings. Photographs from the crime scene, devoid of censorship, were projected for all to see. Every bruise, every wound, was a testament to the brutality of the act and the finality of death. Eyes turned away, some filled with tears, others fighting to maintain composure in the face of such raw horror. It was a gallery of grief, a horrific reminder of the lives torn apart. In the end, the trial was as much about the search for motive as it was about assigning guilt. A motive that remained elusive, like smoke slipping through fingers. Possible theories of jealousy and financial desperation floated, yet none settled comfortably in the mind. As the prosecutor candidly admitted, sometimes there is no satisfying answer, no tidy resolution to the chaos of human actions. The city, like the courtroom, continued to hold its breath, waiting for a verdict that, no matter its outcome, would never truly heal the wounds left by that fateful October day. The day of arrest unfolded under a bruised, threatening sky, the air thick with tension and the anticipation of justice long sought. As officers moved with grim resolve through the damp streets of Harlem, the city seemed to hold its breath, the usual symphony of street sounds dimmed to a muted whisper. The location, a cramped apartment building, bore witness to a tragedy so profound. Its walls seemed to absorb the echo of despair that lingered from the unspeakable act committed within. The corridor leading to Jocelyn Ortega's door was a somber procession, the officers' footsteps heavy with the burden of their duty. Inside, the atmosphere was eerily calm, a stark contrast to the tumultuous storm brewing outside. Ortega sat in the dim light, her face a mask revealing little of the turmoil beneath. The arrest was swift, a matter of routine procedure, yet charged with a gravity that made every motion deliberate and fraught with significance. As the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, there was a palpable shift in the room, an acknowledgement that the wheels of justice, relentless and impartial, had begun their inexorable turn. The pursuit of justice was a labyrinthine journey through the darkest corridors of human motivation and morality. The trial, a theater of anguish and accusation, unfolded under the relentless scrutiny of a city desperate for answers that might never come. The courtroom, cloaked in a heavy, solemn silence, was a crucible of emotions where the raw edges of grief and anger were laid bare for all to see. The air was thick with the mingling scents of polished wood, paper, and the cold metallic tang of anticipation, a sensory reminder of the gravity of the events transpiring within its walls. Kevin Crimm's testimony was a piercing lament, each word a shard of glass that cut through the courtroom's stoic facade. His voice, a fragile thread barely holding against the tide of his emotions, reverberated with the finality of a father's farewell to his beloved children. The impact was visceral. The jurors shifted in their seats, eyes glistening with unshed tears, the shared human experience of loss resonating deeply within their collective consciousness. Throughout the trial, the defense spun a narrative of mental illness, painting Ortega as a woman ensnared by her own mind's malicious deceit. Yet, the prosecution countered with evidence that painted a portrait of premeditation and clarity of thought, a chilling dichotomy that underscored the profound complexity of the human psyche. As the jury wrestled with these conflicting narratives, their deliberations became a microcosm of the broader societal struggle to reconcile the monstrous with the mundane. The verdict, delivered under the unyielding gaze of the public eye, was a moment of collective exhale. Ortega sat, impassive, as the words "guilty on all counts" rang out, a solemn mantra that echoed through the cavernous room. The reactions were immediate and varied. A stifled sob from the gallery, a murmured prayer for the innocent lost, and a silent nod of affirmation among the jurors, their faces etched with the weight of their decision. The gavel's resounding thud was a punctuation mark in the narrative of justice, a declaration that, though the children could never be returned to their parents' arms, a semblance of order had been restored. Sentencing was a denouement wrapped in the somber acceptance of the court's irrevocable decree. Kevin and Marina Crimm's statements were not merely pleas for retribution, but a call for a justice that transcended punishment, a justice that could prevent future tragedies, born from the ashes of their own unspeakable loss. The courtroom was hushed, the air filled with the quiet dignity of their resolve, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of incomprehensible sorrow. As the sentence was pronounced, life without the possibility of parole, the finality was a cold comfort, a reminder that true justice, in a world shattered by violence, remains an elusive ideal. Yet, in their pursuit of meaning and healing, the Crimms had planted the seeds of hope, ensuring that their children's legacy would be one of protection and love, a beacon of light in a world often shadowed by darkness. In the haunting silence that followed, justice stood unyielding, a spectral presence in the hushed courtroom. The scent of polished wood mingled with the weight of grief, a testament to lives forever altered. As Jocelyn Ortega was led away, a poignant truth crystallized. Justice, though imperfect, remains an unwavering force, pursuing even the darkest shadows.